I used to think that being a good man, a good husband, and a good father would be enough to earn me a lifetime of loyalty, but looking back now, I realize just how naive I really was. My name is Ethan Miller, and for 6 years I dedicated my entire life to my wife Emily Carter and the boy I thought was my son, Jason. I worked myself to the bone, carried the weight of our little family, and endured every humiliation that came with poverty, all because I believed love was worth it. Emily had lost her memory, or at least that's what she told me, and I was the idiot who believed her every word. She looked at me with those soft eyes, fragile and pitiful, as if she was a bird with broken wings who needed me to protect her, and I played my part perfectly. I cooked, cleaned, worked multiple jobs, and took care of Jason like he was my flesh and blood. I thought I was building a family worth dying for. Turns out, I was building my own coffin. Because the truth was far crueler than any nightmare I could imagine. Emily wasn't some poor woman who lost her memory. She was a master manipulator who used my love and pity as her shield. She pretended not to remember the man she truly loved, Nathan Reed, her childhood sweetheart who had always been in the picture. And when she finally grew tired of my devotion, she played the same trick again, faking memory loss so she could cut me out of her life and run back into his arms. I wasn't just betrayed, I was discarded, like trash that had served its purpose. And the worst part? Jason, the boy I raised, the one I loved as my own, wasn't even mine. He was Nathan's son, a living reminder that everything I'd built was nothing but a lie. I still remember that night in the Carter family house, the moment everything shattered. Emily stood there with Nathan by her side, looking at me like I was nothing, her voice colder than ice as she said I should leave. Jason sat at the table, smirking in a way that cut me deeper than any knife, his little hands clutching a fork and knife he used to jab at my leg under the table. The sting of metal against flesh didn't hurt half as much as the realization that the child I poured my soul into raising saw me as nothing more than a joke. Nathan laughed, Emily laughed, and I sat there bleeding inside and out, realizing that 6 years of sacrifice had earned me nothing but ridicule. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to shake Emily until she admitted how cruel she was, but all I could do was stare, broken and silent, as the family I thought I had turned their backs on me. They didn't just betray me, they destroyed me. Days blurred together after that. I was thrown into a mental institution, branded as crazy, abandoned to rot. Emily didn't visit, Jason didn't ask about me, and Nathan made sure I knew I had no place left in their lives. I became a ghost while still alive, a man stripped of everything, and in the end, death came as a mercy. My last memory in that hell was of Jason's voice, sharp and mocking, telling me I was too pathetic to even be his father. I closed my eyes, and everything went dark. I thought that was it. The end. But fate had other plans. Because when I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the white walls of an institution or staring down death itself. I was back. Back to the moment before Emily ever faked her memory loss, before I wasted 6 years of my life on people who never deserved me. I had been given a second chance, and this time, I wasn't going to play the fool. When I opened my eyes again, for a split second I thought it was another cruel trick from my broken mind, some hallucination born out of desperation, but then I noticed the details. The air didn't reek of disinfectant like the institution, my wrists weren't bound, and the room around me wasn't painted white. Instead, I was standing in the familiar living room of the Carter house, the very place where everything had begun to fall apart. I touched my face, my chest, my legs. No scars, no injuries, no evidence of the torment I'd endured before my death. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and when I pulled it out, my heart nearly stopped. The date on the screen wasn't right. It was 6 years earlier, the exact week before Emily first faked her memory loss. I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't dreaming. Somehow, impossibly, I had been sent back. Reborn. At first, I didn't know what to feel: shock, confusion, fear, but then it all turned into something sharper, colder: resolve. If God or fate or whatever power out there decided to give me a second chance, then I wasn't going to waste it. Last time, I was a fool, a dog wagging its tail for scraps of affection, throwing away my dreams, my education, and my dignity just to keep a woman and a child who never loved me. This time, no more. I remembered clearly how it all played out, Emily's crocodile tears, the fake memory loss, the years of servitude where I gave everything while she smiled behind my back with Nathan, and then the final betrayal where I died like trash. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms, but the pain grounded me. This was real. I was back. And I knew exactly what I needed to do. The very next day, her mother came to me with an offer, the same one she had made in my previous life. She slid a check across the table, her eyes sharp and cold, as if she already considered me a burden to be removed. $10 million. That was the price she put on my silence, on me walking away from Emily's life. In the past, I had refused out of some misplaced pride, some twisted idea of loyalty, thinking I was fighting for love. And what did that get me? Misery and death. So this time, I didn't hesitate. I picked up the pen, signed the papers, and pocketed the check. Her mother looked stunned, maybe expecting me to beg or fight back, but I just smiled. "Don't worry," I told her, my voice steady, "I won't make the same mistake twice. That money wasn't hush money to might was my ticket to freedom. With it, I could go back to school, finish the degree I had abandoned, and rebuild my life from scratch. In my last life, I gave up my chance to study abroad in London because Emily needed me, because Jason needed me. But Jason was never my son, and Emily never truly needed me. This time, I would go. I would reclaim the future I threw away." As I walked out of the Carter mansion, I glanced back one last time. The house looked the same, but everything was different now. I no longer belonged there, no longer chained myself to people who spat on my devotion. For the first time in years, I felt light, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. But of course, things wouldn't be that simple. Emily wasn't stupid. She noticed the change in me almost immediately. She frowned when I didn't dote on her like before, when I didn't rush to cook her breakfast or anticipate her every whim. She tried her old tricks pretending to be frail, acting like she needed me, but I just nodded and walked away. That unsettled her. She wasn't used to me ignoring her, wasn't used to me having a spine. I could see the suspicion in her eyes, the anger boiling beneath her calm surface. And Nathan? He lingered like a shadow, smug as always, watching from the sidelines. I knew it wouldn't be long before they both made their moves, testing me, trying to see if I would slip back into the obedient fool they once controlled. But this time, I was ready. I had the money. I had the knowledge of what was coming. And most importantly, I had nothing left to lose. Every night, I sat at my desk, studying for the IELTS exam, planning my application to schools in London. The dream I had abandoned once was alive again, and I clung to it with everything I had. Freedom wasn't just an idea, Anna Marie, it was a flight ticket waiting to be bought. Still, even as I pushed forward, the ghosts of my past life haunted me. Sometimes, when I looked at Jason, I felt a pang in my chest. He was still just a boy, innocent in appearance, laughing and playing as if he hadn't already been poisoned by Nathan's influence. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, things could be different this time. But then I remembered his smirk as he stabbed that fork into my leg, the cold words he spat at me before I died, and the pity vanished. He wasn't my responsibility. He never was. I told myself that over and over again, because I knew that clinging to him would only drag me down again. Emily sensed the distance growing between us, and instead of trying to fix it, she turned colder. Her true face started to slip, little by little, and I realized just how blind I had been before. She wasn't a fragile Angeli, was just too stupid to see the devil behind the mask. The more I pulled away, the more desperate she became, until one night she confronted me directly, asking why I was acting so different. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Because I finally woke up." She froze, the mask cracking for just a second, and I knew then that she felt it too, the shift in power. I wasn't the same Ethan she could control anymore. And the best part? That was only the beginning. I thought cutting ties would be simple once I took the money and decided to leave, but I should have known Emily and her little circus wouldn't let me walk away quietly. It didn't take long for the cracks in her perfect act to show. She had gotten so used to me being the obedient husband, the house servant, the man who bent over backward for her every whim, that when I stopped, she didn't know what to do. The first real clash happened at dinner one night. Jason sat across from me, his plate piled high with food I'd cooked out of habit, though I didn't put the same care into it anymore. He looked at me with that spoiled smirk, a mirror of Nathan's arrogance, and said, "Why don't you cut my steak for me, Dad?" The word "Dad" was like poison on his tongue, not affectionate, not respectful, but mocking. In my last life, I would have smiled, picked up the knife, and done it without hesitation. But this time, I just leaned back in my chair and said, "You're old enough to use a knife, Jason. Do it yourself." His eyes widened, then narrowed, and in that moment, I saw it disdain he had always hidden under the guise of a child's innocence. He jabbed his fork into the steak so hard it screeched against the plate, then he kicked me under the table, a sharp strike meant to provoke me. Emily gasped theatrically, like I was the one in the wrong, and Nathan, sitting comfortably with a glass of wine, chuckled. "Come on, Ethan," Nathan said with that smug grin, "you're really going to let the kid starve?" "Some father you are." I wanted to laugh, because the irony was so thick I could choke on it. Some father? Jason wasn't mine. He never was. But they loved throwing that word in my face, as if it was a leash meant to keep me tethered to their little game. "He'll be fine," I said flatly, pushing my plate away. Jason's face twisted in anger, and before I knew it, he was stabbing his fork into my leg, hard enough to break the skin. I didn't flinch. The pain was real, but compared to what I'd been through in my last life, it was nothing. I looked down at him, my voice low and steady, and said, "Do that again, and you'll regret it." For the first time, Jason looked uncertain, maybe even scared. He wasn't used to me standing up for myself, wasn't used to seeing me as anything other than the pathetic pushover he could bully for fun. Emily jumped in then, slamming her hand on the table. "Ethan, how dare you speak to him like that? He's your son." "My son." Those two words burned hotter than the fork wound in my leg. I met her gaze, unblinking, and said, "No, Emily. He's not." The silence that followed was heavy, and for a moment, I thought she might actually crack and reveal the truth, but instead she hid behind her mask, her voice trembling with fake outrage. "You've changed," she said, her eyes narrowing. "You're not the man I married." I almost laughed out loud at that. "You're right," I told her, standing up from the table. "I'm not." Nathan leaned back in his chair, smirking like he owned the place, and said, "Good. Because the man you were before was pathetic. Maybe now you'll finally get out of the way." His words didn't sting like they used to. In my past life, every insult from him cut me down, made me doubt myself. But now, it only fueled me. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Enjoy your little victory lap, Nathan. It won't last." He raised an eyebrow, clearly amused, but I didn't stick around for the rest of their show. I walked out, leaving the three of them behind, their laughter echoing after me. But this time, it didn't follow me like chains. This time, it sounded like background noise, meaningless and weak. Over the next few weeks, the tension only grew. Emily tried harder to pull me back in soft touches, crocodile tears, even late-night confessions about how lost she felt, but I knew it was all a game. I had seen the ending once, and I refused to play my role again. Jason acted out more, throwing tantrums, breaking things, always trying to provoke me, and every time I didn't react, his hatred deepened. Nathan, meanwhile, strutted around like a king, enjoying every second of what he thought was my downfall. But what none of them realized was that I was already gone. Every night, I studied. Every morning, I planned. My escape wasn't just an date was coming, and nothing they did could stop it. Still, there were moments when the weight of it all pressed down on me. Watching Jason laugh with Nathan, seeing Emily's smile reserved only for him, it reminded me of the years I wasted, the love I poured into people who never deserved it. It hurt, but instead of breaking me, it hardened me. Pain became fuel, betrayal became clarity. One evening, I stood outside the Carter mansion, looking up at the house that had been both my prison and my grave. The lights glowed warmly from inside, but I knew better than to mistake it for home. It was just a facade, a stage where I had played the fool. Not anymore. I clenched the acceptance letter in my hand, the one from a university in London, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. My ticket out was real. My future was waiting. All I had to do was let go of the past. But before I could leave, before I could board that plane and finally be free, I knew there would be one last act, one final confrontation with the people who thought they owned me. And when that moment came, I was ready to burn every bridge without looking back. The days leading up to my departure felt like a countdown to freedom, every sunrise pushing me closer to the life I should have lived years ago, but of course Emily wasn't about to let me slip away without trying to tighten the leash one last time. She had grown restless, her once perfect act starting to fray at the edges, and instead of the calm, gentle wife she pretended to be, what came out was a woman desperate to keep control. One evening, while I was packing my things in silence, she stood in the doorway holding a garment bag, her lips pressed together in a trembling smile. "I had this tailored for you," she said softly, almost shyly. I unzipped it and saw a suit inside, expensive, perfectly fitted, clearly chosen with care. In my past life, that suit had been the one I wore to countless humiliations, weddings, dinners, gatherings where I played the role of her accessory while Nathan hovered close by. I could still feel the fabric itching against my skin as I stood in the background, a ghost in my own life. Looking at it now, I felt nothing but disgust. I zipped the bag shut and handed it back to her. "Keep it," I said. "I won't need it where I'm going." Her smile faltered, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. She knew I was slipping away. But fear in her didn't move me anymore. The next day, I ran into someone I hadn't expected: Ryan Brooks, an old friend I hadn't seen since before everything went to hell. He looked thinner, worn down, and when our eyes met, I saw recognition flash across his face. "Ethan," he said, almost disbelieving. In my last life, Ryan had been humiliated by Emily at a party, mocked until he left town in shame, and I hadn't done a damn thing to stop it. This time, I wasn't about to let history repeat itself. We grabbed coffee, and as we sat down, I could see the bruises life had left on him, the bitterness in his voice as he spoke about how hard it had been. "You're still with Emily?" he asked, his tone heavy with pity. I shook my head. "Not for long." For a moment, silence hung between us, then he nodded slowly, almost relieved. "Good. She's poison, Ethan. Always has been." Hearing it out loud from someone else didn't hurt, might validated me. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't bitter, I wasn't imagining her cruelty. She really was poison, and I had been drowning in it for too long. When I returned to the Carter mansion that night, Emily was waiting for me in the living room, Jason curled up beside her like a miniature Nathan, sneering the moment I walked in. "Where were you?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Out," I replied simply, brushing past her. Jason jumped up, blocking my path, and said, "Don't talk to my mom like that." My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice calm. "Move, Jason." He didn't, and for a moment we stared at each other, man to boy, and I realized he wasn't even a child in my eyes anymore, was just another extension of their cruelty. I stepped around him, ignoring his angry huff, and went upstairs. That night, I finished packing. Every shirt folded, every book placed neatly in the suitcase felt like another chain being broken. The flight ticket sat on my desk, a promise of freedom. Emily knocked on my door at midnight, her voice trembling. "Ethan, please, let's talk. Don't go." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't hear her, but because there was nothing left to say. She had burned that bridge long ago. When the morning of my departure finally came, I wheeled my suitcase through the halls of that mansion one last time. Emily stood at the top of the stairs in silence, Jason clinging to her side, and Nathan leaning against the wall with a smug grin. They looked like the perfect little family. Let them have it. They deserved each other. I paused at the door, turned back, and said, "This is the last time you'll see me. Don't bother looking." Emily's eyes widened, but before she could speak, I stepped out and closed the door behind me. The weight lifted instantly. The car ride to the airport felt surreal, the city rushing past as if the universe itself wanted to see me gone. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking back, I was looking forward. Boarding that plane, I felt a rush of emotions: anger, relief, grief, and hope, all tangled together, but above all else, I felt alive. I had walked away from the chains of betrayal and humiliation, and ahead of me was a future wide open, waiting to be claimed. I promised myself one thing as the plane lifted off the ground: I would never let anyone drag me back into the hell I'd escaped. I would build something for myself, something real, something that couldn't be taken away. And when the time came to return, I wouldn't come back as the broken man they once knew. I would return as someone untouchable. Someone they could never laugh at again. When the boardroom doors closed behind me that morning, I knew this wasn't just another routine meeting, this was war, the kind of corporate showdown where reputations get shredded and careers are buried alive, and the irony was I had been the one to set the trap, yet still I could feel the tension clawing at my chest, because even though I was confident, betrayal always has a way of cutting deeper than expected, especially when it comes from someone who once claimed to love you, and Emily sat across the long mahogany table like she owned the place, her sleek black dress and perfectly styled hair screaming power and arrogance, while Nathan flanked her like some smug second-rate knight protecting his queen, but all I could see was the hypocrisy, the years I wasted on her lies, the sacrifices I made only for her to trample me into the dirt, and now she dared to challenge me in my own territory. The company I built with my blood and sweat, the empire I resurrected from ashes after she abandoned me. The board members shuffled their papers nervously, whispering among themselves, unsure which side to back, and I let the silence stretch, because silence was power, silence made them sweat, until finally I leaned forward, tapped my fingers against the polished wood, and said in the calmest voice I could muster, "Shall we begin?" And just like that the game was on. Emily launched into her speech, painting herself as the victim, claiming I had been ruthless, unfair, selfish, everything she could throw to make me look like a monster, while Nathan added his fake numbers and forged reports, trying to sway the undecided board members, but what they didn't realize was that I had anticipated every move, every word, every document they thought would corner me, because I had spent weeks preparing, gathering evidence, lining up witnesses, and timing everything down to the minute, and as Emily's words echoed off the walls, I slid a thick folder across the table, my ace in the hole, filled with proof of her embezzlement, Nathan's fraudulent dealings, and the secret accounts they thought no one could trace, and the look on their faces when they realized I had outplayed them was priceless, like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. "You talk about loyalty," I said, standing up so every eye was on me, "but loyalty isn't lying, it isn't stealing, and it sure as hell isn't betrayal. What you two did wasn't business, it was personal, and now everyone here knows it." Gasps rippled through the room as the evidence was projected on the screen, transaction after transaction, photo after photo, undeniable facts staring them in the face, and for the first time since walking into that room Emily's confidence cracked, her lips trembled, her eyes darted around like a cornered animal, and Nathan's smug grin vanished into something closer to panic, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles went white. And the board members, who minutes ago were unsure, now leaned back in their chairs, arms crossed, the tide shifting visibly in my favor. I didn't stop there, I couldn't, because this wasn't just about winning a vote, it was about showing them, showing her, showing myself, that I wasn't the same man she betrayed, I wasn't the weak fool who begged her to stay, I was Ethan Miller, and I wasn't going to let anyone write my story but me. So I laid out the final piece, the partnership with Sophia Bennett, the deal that would secure our future growth for years, the kind of opportunity Emily and Nathan could never compete with, and when Sophia herself walked into the room, sharp and confident, confirming everything, it was like the final nail in their coffin. The board voted almost unanimously in my favor, the motion to strip me of power crushed before it even got a chance to breathe, and as the gavel hit the table, sealing the decision, I turned to Emily and Nathan, leaned close enough for only them to hear, and whispered, "Game over." Their faces were pale, drained of all that fake confidence, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me, not because the war was over, it wasn't, not by a long shot, but because I had finally taken back control, I had finally stopped being the victim, and now the real reckoning could begin. As I walked out of that room with Sophia by my side, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, I couldn't help but think how different things were now, how the man they tried to bury had come back stronger, sharper, hungrier, and yet a small part of me, deep down, still burned with something raw and unhealed, because defeating them in business was one thing, but erasing the scars of betrayal, reclaiming the years lost, facing the ghost of a love that once felt real, that was another battle altogether. And I knew Emily wasn't done. She never accepted defeat easily, which meant sooner or later she'd come back swinging, and when she did, I'd be ready, because this time I wasn't just fighting for revenge, I was fighting for myself, my future, and maybe, just maybe, for the chance to let someone like Sophia in, if I could ever let go of the past. Walking out of that boardroom with Sophia at my side felt like winning the war, but deep down I knew it was only one battle, because people like Emily don't just crawl away quietly, they come back, more desperate, more dangerous, and sure enough it didn't take long before the storm hit, and it wasn't subtle either, it was public, messy, and calculated to drag my name through the mud. Tabloids screaming headlines about my so-called cruelty, my cold heart, my betrayal of family, Emily playing the victim card so hard you'd think she was auditioning for an Oscar, and the worst part was Jason, the boy I once believed was mine, standing there in pictures with her, looking up at Nathan like he was some kind of hero, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't tear something out of me, because even if he wasn't my blood, I had once carried him on my shoulders, taught him to ride a bike, tucked him in at night, and now he was just another pawn in their little game. I wanted to scream, I wanted to burn it all down, but rage doesn't win wars, strategy does, so I kept quiet, I worked, I moved pieces they couldn't even see, and when Sophia caught me staring too long at those headlines, she said something that stuck. They want to control the story, Ethan. Don't let them. Write your own. Simple words, but they cut through the noise like a knife, and from that moment on I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep fighting Emily on her terms, dragging myself into the gutter where she thrived. I had to rise above, build something so undeniable that no smear campaign could touch me, and so that's what I did, pouring every ounce of energy into expansion, partnerships, innovation. And with Sophia's sharp instincts and my relentless drive, we turned every attempt at sabotage into fuel. Every smear into free publicity, until the narrative shifted and the same media that painted me as a villain started calling me a visionary, a survivor, a man who rebuilt himself from ashes. But just when I thought I had finally pulled ahead for good, Emily came at me with her most desperate move yet. She tried to take Sophia down, spreading lies about her, digging into her past, twisting truths into poison, and for a moment Sophia wavered, not because she was weak, but because everyone has scars, and having them dragged into the light hurts like hell. But I stood by her the way no one had ever stood by me when I was falling apart. I told her she wasn't alone, that we were in this together, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I realized revenge wasn't the endgame, healing was, building something real was, and Emily had no power over that. The final showdown wasn't in a boardroom or a courtroom, it was on a stage, cameras flashing, investors, partners, and press all watching as we unveiled our latest project, the kind of thing that would cement our legacy for years, and Emily, bold as ever, tried to crash it, storming the event with Nathan at her side, demanding attention, shouting accusations, but instead of responding with anger, I took the microphone, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "Emily, you've spent years trying to destroy me, but what you don't understand is you already lost. not because I outplayed you, not because I exposed you, but because you don't matter to me anymore, and the moment someone stops mattering, that's when the game ends. The room fell silent, cameras caught every second, and for the first time Emily had nothing to say, no weapon left, no card to play, just standing there trembling while Nathan tried to pull her away, his face pale with humiliation, and I felt something lift off my chest, like chains snapping, like a weight I'd been carrying for years finally gone. That night, Sophia and I stood on the rooftop overlooking the city, the lights stretching out like stars, and for once I wasn't thinking about revenge or betrayal, I was thinking about the future, about the man I had become, the man I wanted to be, and I realized maybe all the pain, all the scars, had been leading me here, to this moment, to someone who saw me for who I was, not who I used to be. Did Emily ever get what she deserved? Maybe not in the dramatic, fiery way I once fantasized, but sometimes the worst punishment isn't losing everything, it's realizing you destroyed yourself trying to hurt someone else, and from what I heard later, that's exactly what happened. Her name blacklisted, her allies gone, Nathan eventually cutting ties when the pressure became too much, and her living in the shadow of what could have been, while I moved forward, stronger than ever. People still ask me if I regret it, if I regret the years I wasted, the love I lost, and the answer is complicated, because regret eats at you if you let it, but I've learned to turn it into something else, a reminder, a lesson, a fire that keeps me moving, and if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this: I may have been broken once, but I'll never be broken again, because I'm not the man Emily betrayed anymore. I'm Ethan Miller, and this time, I'm writing my own story.